So what are some of these key loopholes, and why are your car insurance rates right now being increased? So the first big loophole is that even though the law was signed on May 30th of this year by Governor Whitmer, it doesn't take effect for over a year. It doesn't actually take effect until July 2nd, 2020 for most of these key provisions. So what that means is that at renewal time right now, a lot of insurance companies are actually raising your rates now. And they're doing it because they can, because the law did not take immediate effect. So then next year, when they have to start providing these mandatory rate reductions, these mandatory savings under the new law, they're actually now going to have to do that from a higher number because they raised your rates at renewal instead of at the number, the rates that you were paying before. So that's one big reason why everybody is now starting to see these big rate increases at renewal time, because the insurance companies are actually trying to keep their profit margins intact so that they're not losing money. They can actually now cut from a higher number instead of at the number that you're currently paying, even if nothing else has changed, and even if you were not involved in any kind of car accidents or traffic violations or anything of the sort. That's why a lot of people are getting hit now at renewal time with these big rate increases. The second loophole is actually even worse, and it's really, really clever. And what a lot of insurance companies are doing is they are actually reincorporating the same insurance companies. They're incorporating under slightly different names. So same insurance companies or their subsidiaries of these insurance companies incorporating under a new name. Why are they doing this? They're doing it because if they're starting to do business next year under a new name that they have now reincorporated under, then they've wiped out any ratings history from the previous insurance company. And therefore, if there's no rating history, they don't have to cut your premiums from that previous rating history that they had, their previous premiums that they were charging, because they're essentially starting with a blank slate. So the way to think of it is, for example, if you have a mutual fund that had really, really lousy performance, a lot of times mutual funds will just change their name so that they can wipe out all those years of subpar performance and start fresh. Or what I see a lot as a lawyer that handles some very serious trucking injury cases in Michigan and across the country is something with trucking companies that do the same thing. They're called chameleon carriers, and what they do is if they have a very unsafe trucking company, they'll stop doing business under the name of Company A on a Friday. They'll start doing business again with the same trucks and the same drivers as Company B on the Monday to try and wipe out their safety rating. And the insurance companies are now doing the exact same thing. So what they're doing is by creating these subsidiary, new, slightly different names of existing insurance companies, they're trying to wipe out what they were previously charging people, so they then don't have to provide these mandatory savings based upon the old rates that they were charging. So that's the second loophole. The third loophole is these discriminatory non-driving factors that are being used to assess your rates, and in many cases increase your rates unfairly if you are a very safe driver. So what are non-driving factors? There are things like gender. So for example, women and widows will pay more than men and widowers, which makes no sense whatsoever, because actually women statistically are safer drivers, but insurance companies have been using a loophole for years and years to charge women more. Another really ugly and pernicious thing is the use of zip codes, what a lot of people know as redlining. And what happens with redlining is if they don't like where you live, if they don't like that you live in Detroit or Flint or Battle Creek or certain other areas in Michigan. They use zip codes and they charge those people more, even though they may have the exact same driving history or actually be even safer drivers than people that might live in, let's say, affluent suburbs of Metro Detroit or Grand Rapids. And another example is credit scoring. A lot of people have errors in their credit scores. There's a million different reasons why credit scores can be inaccurate. Insurance companies have been using credit scoring for a long time to increase people's rates. So what's happened, and the reason I address all this is because Governor Whitmer and the politicians that voted for this were calling this one of the real big wins, that getting rid of these non-driving factors was a real win for consumers. The problem is that's just not true. So this was another big loophole that the insurance companies and their lobbyists and their lawyers had found with the new law. So regarding women, it's the same issue as why people are getting their rates jacked up at renewal time. The new law doesn't take effect really until next year. So they're still able to use all these discriminatory non-driving factors to increase your rates right now. Regarding zip codes and redlining, in theory, the new law makes this illegal. The problem is that their lobbyists and lawyers were, it looks like, a lot smarter than the people who are negotiating this on behalf of consumers, because even though redlining and zip codes is now illegal under the new law, they can use territorial rating. And the difference between a zip code and a territory, there is no difference. So if they didn't like that you lived in Detroit before and they charged you more money, they can still charge you more money right now. So it was just a loophole that they found in the law. The third thing, which I think is really also very disturbing, which is credit scoring, that's also illegal, but they've again found ways around it. So even though they can't use your credit score, they can use things like credit information. They can use the insurance score, which is essentially the insurance company creating their own credit score for you, and use that to assess your rates. And there's another thing, and by the way, most of these things are illegal in most other states, but they haven't been in Michigan, and now unfortunately, even with this new law, they've created these giant loopholes. So in effect, they could still be punishing Michigan drivers and using these discriminatory non-driving factors to charge people more money. Another thing that unfortunately is still going to be allowed by the insurance companies, it's very unfair, is something called price optimization. So price optimization, think of it as like a squeal factor. So, and the example I always use is like with Comcast, with your cable bill, where the cable companies are really good at figuring out how much they can charge you and keep charging you until basically you squeal and it gets so expensive that you want to cut the cord or jump ship and go to satellite. And the insurance companies do the same thing. So they use price optimization to figure out how much they can keep increasing your rates at renewal time until it gets to that point that is just high enough that you're not going to leave and start shopping around to another insurance company. And that's going to continue sadly as well. So we have all these loopholes that very, very clearly are meant to get around the spirit and the intent of the new law, primarily which was to provide you, the consumer, with rate relief and to lower the cost of your auto insurance. And just as an aside, I want to address that because, that really was never going to happen. And, what people don't understand is that they were never going to see big savings with this new law. That was a lie. So what people never quite understood is that these rate savings that they're telling us we're going to get aren't on our total auto insurance bill. It's just on the PIP portion of our auto insurance bill. So if you're paying really a lot of money for auto insurance before this, you're still going to be paying a lot of money for auto insurance after this new law takes effect. And even if you choose the lowest possible PIP coverage, which is 45% in savings for $50,000 in PIP coverage, which is not a lot of money. Understand that that's 45% savings on approximately 40 or 45% of your bill. So you're still going to be paying a lot of money. Things like collision, which is almost half of your bill, doesn't get touched. And another thing people don't quite realize is that all this expires in 8 years. These are temporary savings and then they all go away. And another thing people don't realize is, and I wrote a blog on this that I encourage you to read on June 4th of this year, of 2019, that the savings you as a consumer, as a driver in Michigan, receive under this law compared to what the insurance companies save, what you receive are peanuts. What they save is going to be in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And I explained in that blog all the different reasons why. But as to the amount of money that you save, the final thing you need to understand is that it's probably going to get wiped out by increases in your health insurance, if you have health insurance, and by increases in Medicaid taxes. Because if you have health insurance, if you have $1 million in hospital bills from a terrible crash before, that would have been paid by your auto insurance. The new auto law doesn't make that $1 million bill go away, it just transfers it to other people. So in this case, it would be to your health insurance if you have health insurance. But what you're going to see is that a lot of health insurance plans are going to really increase prices now because they have to pay all these new costs. Another thing you're going to see, by the way, is they're all going to have, many are going to put in auto exclusions so that they don't have to pay for people who are injured in auto accidents. And if you don't have health insurance, or if you have an auto exclusion in your health insurance policy, what that really means now is that all falls on you. So now it's up to you after that $50,000 in PIP gets exhausted, and that's coming out of your pocket. And unfortunately for a lot of people, that means they have to declare personal bankruptcy because of medical debt, and then it gets transferred to Medicaid. And we know what's interesting is, a lot of these politicians that voted for this, that say they absolutely don't support any taxes, they were just fine with protecting the insurance companies and allowing tens and tens of millions of dollars now to get transferred from what the auto insurance companies would have paid before onto Medicaid now, because both the Senate and the House estimate that you're going to have tens and tens of millions of dollars now that have to be paid by Medicaid. So in effect, we're all now paying for a big Medicaid tax hike to pay for these auto crash cases. So, for all these different reasons, I think people are going to get really disappointed by this new law. But in terms of right now, why people are getting shocked and they're getting these renewals and they're seeing these huge spikes, you need to understand what's happening, which is, unfortunately, the insurance companies were really good at finding these loopholes in the law, and they're putting them in and exploiting them. So they're raising your rates now, so that way when they have to cut, they can cut from a higher rate and keep their profits intact. They were incorporating under new names. They're still using discriminatory non-driving factors, and in many cases, like with using territories or credit information instead of credit scoring, they're going to keep using it even with this new law. And that's why I think a lot of people are going to be very frustrated. So, all that being said, if you start to feel like the lobbyists and the lawyers for the insurance industry were playing chess, and the people who voted for this and said this was such a great bill that was going to protect consumers were playing checkers, now you know how I've been feeling for the last many months since this bill was signed. And with that, I'm happy to take questions if we have any.
So Larry asked us, what happens if you don't have car insurance? and someone hits your car and you get hurt, do you have any rights?
Yeah, so Larry, I have felt very strongly that this is a civil rights issue. This is one of the most egregious things in Michigan law, both under the old law, and it's going to continue now. So you have no rights. And the way the law works in Michigan, and this affects people, for example, in Detroit, where over 50% of people are driving uninsured. If they are completely innocent and they are rear-ended at a red light by a drunk driver, understand that under Michigan law, they cannot sue the negligent drunk driver for their injuries. They cannot sue. And as a lawyer, I have a real problem with this. I don't know how we've somehow allowed the politicians to take away people's Seventh Amendment right to a jury trial under the Constitution, but you have no rights. So unfortunately, and I've practiced law in 14 states. I handle very serious cases all over the country. I've been the president of the National Motor Vehicle Trial Lawyers. I've been on national organizations. No one else in the country has a law like this one. This is one of the most draconian, most unfair laws I've ever seen. But if you are completely innocent and you are driving your own car uninsured, you are in big trouble, and you have no rights under Michigan law. You cannot collect any PIP, and you cannot even sue the wrongdoer, negligent driver who caused your injuries, no matter how serious they are.
Now, someone else asked if my rates have been hiked up recently and for no good reason, can I or should I complain to the insurance commissioner?
The answer is yes. You should complain. Unfortunately, I'll be honest, I don't think there's much they can do. This was just an area where I think the insurance company lobbyists were very good at exploiting and finding these loopholes during the negotiations on this bill. And they're going to keep being able to exploit these loopholes. I would complain. I know that a number of House Democrats are sending a letter right now to Attorney General Nessel, asking her to look into how many insurance companies right now are reincorporating under new names to wipe out their ratings history, and how many of them at renewal time right now, before the law takes effect, are spiking and really hiking people's insurance rates so they can get away with having a bigger cushion of profits before they have to cut rates next year under the new law. You should, and hopefully there will be investigations, but that's what they're doing right now. Then if we're good on questions, I just want to thank everybody. And please, if you do have any questions, we are always happy to try and answer them. We help a lot of people. We really, truly do care. And you're welcome to reach us anytime at michiganautolaw.com. Thank you.